All plants of Kingdom Plantae are multicellular eukaryotes. It means it have true nucleus and membrane-bound organelles found in the cytoplasm of the plant cell. They are able to undergo photosynthesis to produce their own food, and the plant cell is enclosed by cell wall, which is composed of cellulose. They are able to store the food in the form of starch. Lastly, the plants able to reproduce sexually and asexually. Some of them will reproduce sexually or asexually. All plants of Kingdom Plantae show alternation of generation in their life cycle. Sporophyte generation is the diploid stage, which produces haploid spore by meiosis. And gametophyte generation is the haploid stage, produces haploid gamete by mitosis. The haploid gametophytes are multicellular structure that consists of male structure, which is the antheridium, and the female gametophyte, which is the archegonium. Within the antheridium, haploid sperm will be formed through mitosis, and the haploid egg cell will be formed within archegonium through mitosis. Through fertilization, a diploid zygote is formed, and it will grow and develop into multicellular structure, which is the diploid sporophyte. The diploid sporophyte will undergo development and form a structure which is sporangium. Within the sporangium, process meiosis will produce haploid spores, which is going to germinate into a multicellular haploid gametophyte. This diagram summarizes the gametophyte and sporophyte of four main groups of Kingdom Plantae. Both gametophytes and sporophytes are different in morphology. It means they are different in physical appearance. For instance, these are the gametophytes of the Bryophytes, and we have the gametophytes of Phylums, gametophytes of Gymnosperms, and lastly the gametophytes of Angiosperms. Gametophytes are haploid stage because each cell of this structure consists of haploid set of chromosomes. However, here are the sporophytes of Bryophytes and the sporophytes of the Phylums, the sporophytes of Gymnosperms, and the whole three sporophytes of the Angiosperm. They are considered as diploid stage because each cell of the sporophyte consists of diploid set of chromosomes. The classification of Kingdom Plantae into four main groups of plants, which are Bryophytes, Pteridophytes, Gymnosperms, and Angiosperms, are based on the five main unique characteristics, which are the presence of vascular tissues, the presence of seed, the dominance and dependence of the gametophyte and sporophyte generation, the types of reproduction, and the types of spore formed in the sporangium. These are the summaries of the grouping of the four main groups of plants. Is not yet the phylum. For this semester, we are going to study one of the phylum under Bryophyte, which is the Phylum Bryophyta. The most primitive plants under Kingdom Plantae is Bryophyte or mosses, or in bahasa Melayu, lumut, yaitu tumbuhan yang paling asas. And there are three phyla under Bryophytes, which are Phylum Hepatophyta, Phylum Anthophyta, and Phylum Bryophyta. For this semester, we are going to focus on Phylum Bryophyta, which has the leafy gametophyte. Maksudnya, struktur gametophyte dia berbentuk daun and their sporophyte is tall and capsule-like. Ada structure seperti capsule. Let's start with the dominance and dependence of bryophytes. For bryophyte, the haploid stage, which is the gametophyte, is considered a dominant generation because compared with the sporophyte generation, they are larger in size and they are live longer compared to sporophytes. And one more thing is, gametophytes, they are leafy structure. They have the photosynthetic pigment that enable the photosynthesis. So they will produce their own food and support the sporophyte. This is why we say the diploid stage sporophytes are dependent on the gametophyte. Bryophyte is the most primitive plants of Kingdom Plantae. Maksudnya merupakan tumbuhan yang paling asas. This is because they do not have any vascular tissue throughout the body of these plants. We call it as non-vascular plants. They have hydroid, which is function as xylem, and leptoid, which is function as the phloem in the vascular plants. Due to the non-vascular structure throughout the body, they do not have the true roots, stems, and leaf. Bryophytes have rhizoids, which is the hair-like structure, help them to anchor to soil surface. The cell wall is laid of lignin, which is the structure give strength to the vascular plants. So if we compare the cross-section of the plant body of bryophytes and the plant body of other advanced plants, we notice that the distribution of the cells under microscopic structure is very simple. They do not show complicated vascular tissue. Water is an important medium for both asexual and sexual reproductions. During the sexual reproduction, the flagellated sperms will swim in the water and reach at the archegonium. This diagram summarizes the life cycle of polytrichum species, which is one of the examples of Phylum Bryophyta. The life cycle shows alternation of generation. We start with the haploid stage, which consists of the male gametophyte and female gametophyte. Both are multicellular, but each of the cells of this gametophyte consists of haploid set of chromosomes. At the tip of male gametophyte, there is the antheridia. This is one antheridium and we have many antheridia. Within it, there is the formation of haploid sperm through mitosis. At the tip of female gametophyte, there is the structure archegonium and more than one archegonia. Within the archegonium, there is the formation of haploid itself through mitosis. When there is a raining day, the raindrops will splash out the flagellated sperms and they are able to swim in the water medium and reach at the archegonium, the female gametophyte. Within the archegonium, there is the fertilization, which form the diploid zygote. The diploid zygote will grow and develops into embryo and then the young sporophyte, which is the diploid generation. The mature sporophyte consists of the capsule structure, which contains the sporangium. Haploid spores will form in the sporangium through the process of meiosis. If the haploid spore contains the genetic information for female gametophyte, it will germinate and grow into the female gametophyte. However, if the haploid spores contains the genetic information encoded for the formation of male gametophyte, it will germinate into the protonemata and grow as a bud and become a male gametophyte, same as the female one. During the second year, you are going to study another example, which is Marcantia species belong to Phylum Hepatophyta, because it highlights that the water medium is very important for sexual reproduction, which involves the fertilization between the haploid itself and the haploid sperm, and it's also important for the asexual reproduction, which involve gamete, the cell involved in asexual reproduction. The second group of plants is Pteridophytes, in which we focus on Phylum Pteridophyta. Pteridophytes are also called as ferns, or in Malay, pakupakis. There are two main phyla need to be studied in our syllabus, which are Phylum Lycophyta or Lycopodiophyta and Phylum Pteridophyta. During first year, we focus on Phylum Pteridophyta, especially the example Bryophytes species. Pteridophytes or ferns are vascular plants, but they are unable to form seed, so they are seedless vascular plants. Pteridophytes have simple lignified vascular tissues, which are able to provide support and transport the water and nutrients throughout the body of pteridophytes. With the presence of vascular tissues, pteridophytes are able to show through roots, stems, and leaves. For the dominance and dependence of pteridophyte, which is different with the bryophyte, because the diploid stage, which is the sporophyte generation, is the dominant generation. A mature sporophyte show larger size than the gametophyte, and they are longer life. The sporophytes of pteridophyte is photosynthetic. It means that they are independent from the gametophyte generation. The reduced haploid generation, which is the gametophyte generation, means that they are getting smaller in size by time. However, they are independent because they are able to produce their own food through photosynthesis. Same as bryophyte, pteridophytes require water medium for fertilization. The diagram shows the life cycle of Bryophytes species, which is about the sexual reproduction. The haploid spores will germinate and develop into a matured gametophyte, which is a multicellular structure that consists of the female gametophyte, archegonium, and the male gametophyte, antheridium. This is the actual photo of a matured gametophyte. When the gametophytes were bathed in the rainwater or during the rainy day, the flagellated sperm will swim and reach at the archegonium, where is the site of egg cell formation. Fertilization occurs within the archegonium and form zygote, which is the diploid stage. Zygotes will undergo repeated mitosis to form new sporophytes. This is the actual picture of the feeder head, which is the initial stage of the young sporophyte, and it will grow and expand into this structure, which refer to the young sporophyte. And the young sporophyte will grow into the mature sporophyte, which is still the diploid stage, and beneath the leaf structure, there is a structure called as sorus, which consists of a cluster of sporangium. Each sporangium shows development of numerous spores through meiosis. During the growth of sporophyte, we will notice that the gametophytes will undergo reduction in size, and at the end or eventually, gametophytes will be degenerated. Some species of pteridophytes will produce only one type of spore in the sporangium, which is called as homosporous pteridophytes. When the spore germinates into the gametophyte, this gametophyte is referred as bisexual gametophyte because they contain both archegonium and antheridium, where the haploid gamete will be formed at the same gametophyte. Some species of pteridophytes are heterosporous because the spore forms are two types which is differ in size. Megaspore will germinate into the female gametophyte, which is the archegonium, to produce egg cell. However, microspore, which is smaller in size, will germinate into male gametophyte, which is antheridium, to produce sperm. These are the micrographs of two different types of species. The homosporous lycopodium species, where we can notice that within the sporangium, each of the haploid spores are similar in size. And we have another type which is heterosporous Selaginella. In different sporangium, like this one, megasporangium, is produced megaspore, which is going to become the female gametophyte after germination. And it has microsporangium, which contains the microspore, which is much smaller in size compared to the megaspore. The main focus of this semester is Dryopterid species from the Phylum Pteridophyta, which is a homosporous pteridophyte. At the bottom of the pinule of Dryopteris, there is a structure called as sorus. Each sorus consists of numerous sporangium, and within the sporangium, there is the formation of spores, and each of the spores are similar in size, or only one type of spores are formed in the sporangium. Let's move on to the more advanced plants, which are Gymnosperms. We are going to focus on Phylum Coniferophyta. Gymnosperms are also known as non-flowering plants, and there are four main phyla of Gymnosperms, which are Coniferophyta or Pinophyta. The examples are Pinus species. The second phylum is Psychotophyta. The example is Cycas species. And we have Ginkgophyta, Ginkgo species, and Gnetophyta, and the example is Gnetum species. These four phyla can be observed and differentiate based on a few structures, such as the leaf shape and also their reproductive structure. And during this semester, we are going to focus on Coniferophyta or the Pinus species. Gymnosperms or non-flowering plants, they are vascularized plants. It means that they have the complex lignified vascular tissue throughout the body of the plants. These vascular tissue are important in provide the support and to transport the water and nutrients throughout the body of the plants. Gymnosperms share some common characteristics with pteridophytes. One of it is about the dominance and dependence. The sporophyte generation is dominant generation in Gymnosperm because it shows large size and they are long life. The gametophytes of Gymnosperm will become reduced by time, and they are non-photosynthetic structure, so it's dependent on the sporophyte generation for water and nutrients. Water is not the important medium for sexual reproduction in Gymnosperm. because the non-motile sperm will reach the egg cell with the formation of pollen tube. And how the sperm can reach at the female gametophyte is through the pollination agent, which is wing. This picture summarizes the life cycle of Pinus species, where the diploid mature sporophyte is actually the whole tree of this gymnosperm. At the same tree, it consists of both ovulate cone, the female cone, and the pollen cone, the male cone. At the tip of the scale, at the ovulate cone, there is the ovule. Within the ovule, there is the megasporangium, which is the site where we can find the diploid megasporocyte. And at the scale of pollen cone, there is the microsporangium, where is the site of male gametophyte formation, which are the haploid pollen grains. The haploid pollen grains, or these male gametophytes, are formed by meiosis. The pollen grains will be carried by wing and reach at the megasporangium. Within the megasporangium, we focus back at the megaspore cell, which will undergo the meiosis, and only one surviving haploid megaspore will develop into the female gametophyte, which is the archegonium. Within the archegonium, there is the female gamete, the egg cell. The sperm will be released into the archegonium through the formation of pollen tube, and the fusion of these two nuclei will be called as fertilization, and a diploid embryo is formed within the archegonium. This embryo is protected within the seed. When the seeds are dispersed out from the tree, it will land at the soil and germinate into seedling, which is the young sporophyte. And the young sporophyte will develop into the next stage to become a mature sporophyte. And this is the reason why gymnosperms are called as seed-bearing plants, because the seeds are found at the scale of the female cone. However, the seed is not enclosed by fruit, which is not protected by fruit as the angiosperm. Because of the formation of two different sizes of spores, which are the megaspore and the pollen grain that contains the microspore, so they are heterosporous. Last but not least, we focus on the most advanced plants in Kingdom Plantae, which are flowering plants or angiosperms. We only focus on one phylum, which is Phylum Anthophyta. Angiosperms are seed plants, and the seed is protected within the fruit structure. So compared with the gymnosperm, the seeds are found at the surface of the scale, which is the scale of the female cones. But for angiosperm, the seeds are always protected within the fruit. Angiosperms are the most advanced plants because it have complex lignified vascular tissues, which are the xylem consists of vessel elements and trachea, and phloem consists of component cells and the siftute elements. They have the true root, stem, and leaf. Compared with the previous plants group, angiosperm, the vascular tissue are grouped into a structure called as vascular bundle, which is more organized structure. The sporophyte is the dominant generation because it is photosynthetic or independent. However, their gametophytes are very small size, which is microscopic, and depend on sporophyte for nutrition. The spores are heterosporous because it has megaspore and microspores formation. We have studied this picture during last semester, how the haploid gamete itself can be formed within the female gametophyte, which is the embryocyte for the flowering plants, and the haploid male gamete, which is the sperm formed from the generative cell within the male gametophyte, which is the pollen grain. And one of the most important unique characteristics of angiosperm is they have flowers as their sexual reproductive organ. With the presence of flower, the pollination agent show higher variety. It can be biotic components such as insects and animals, or some of the flowers will require abiotic pollinators such as wind or water. No matter how, the water is not the main medium for the sexual reproduction because the sperms are non-motile sperm. They will reach the egg cell with the formation of the pollen tube. And for the Anthophyta, the double fertilization is one of the unique characteristics can be observed. Among the four groups of plants from Kingdom Plantae, Bryophyte is the non-vascular plants. Phylums consist of simple linified vascular tissues, and Gymnosperms consists of complex linified vascular tissue, where the xylem consists of trachea and phloem consists of sieve tube elements only. The most advanced plants are Angiosperms, which are complex linified vascular tissue. With the presence of linified vascular tissue, which is able to provide support and strength to the body of the plant and enable the growth against the gravity. This is the reason why the size of adult plants increases from Bryophyte to Angiosperm. Bryophyte is the only group of plants have larger gametophyte than the sporophyte generation. And the gametophyte is photosynthetic, which means they are independent. And phylums have both gametophyte and sporophyte, which are photosynthetic. However, the gametophyte is reduced in size. The gametophytes of Gymnosperms and Angiosperms are microscopic, which means it only can be observed with the aid of microscope, and the size is much more smaller than the sporophyte generation, which is actually the whole tree of the Gymnosperm or Angiosperm. That's why the size of gametophyte decreases from Bryophyte to Angiosperm, and the dominance of gametophyte decreases as well. Bryophytes are the non-vascular plants, and phylums or Pteridophytes are vascular but seedless plants. And the seed plants include the Gymnosperm and Angiosperms. The sporophyte generation of Bryophytes are dependent on gametophyte due to the smaller size of sporophytes compared to the one found in phylums and Gymnosperm and also Angiosperm. The sporophyte generation in Bryophytes have to obtain the nutrients and water from gametophytes. In phylums or in Pteridophyte, the size of sporophytes increases, and they are independent because they are photosynthetic. And the gametophyte is smaller in size, but they are independent gametophytes because they are able to produce their own food through photosynthesis. The last are seed plants, which consist of Gymnosperm and Angiosperm, show reduced gametophytes, which is dependent on sporophyte because they are non-photosynthetic. So, The size of sporophyte increases from bryophyte to angiosperm, and dominance of sporophyte increases as well. Both bryophytes or moles and pteridophytes or phylums are seedless plants. Their habitat is damp or high moisture environments where water mediums is very important for sexual reproduction. The flagellated sperm of these two groups of plants require water medium to swim and reach at the female gametophyte, which are the archegonium, and fertilize the egg cell and form the diploid sporophyte. Same goes to the gametophyte of phylums, where the protellus consists of male gametophyte and female gametophyte. The flagellated sperm will reach at the female gametophyte, which is the archegonium, fertilize the egg cell within it, and form the diploid sporophyte generation. The initial stage is the feeder head, and then they will spread into the mature sporophytes. Both gymnosperm and angiosperms are seed plants because the seeds are formed from ovule after the fertilization occurs between the haploid sperm and the haploid egg cell. The non-motile haploid sperm will reach at the egg cell through the formation of pollen tube in both plants. The diploid zygote will grow into the embryo, which is protected within the seed for both gymnosperm and angiosperm. The reproductive organs of gymnosperm are cone. So, the seeds are formed at the surface of the cone scale, which make the seed exposed. However, for angiosperm, with the presence of flower, after the double fertilization, the seeds are formed within the fruit, which show protection to the seed. Bryophytes are homosporous, means they produce one type of spore in the sporangium. However, some of the pteridophytes are heterosporous, such as Selaginella species. But in this semester, we focus on Dryopteris, which is an example of homosporous pteridophytes. Both gymnosperm and angiosperms are heterosporous because they produce two different types of spores, which are microspore, which will germinate into the microgametophyte, and megaspore, which is going to form the megagametophyte for female. This table summarizes the evolutionary relationship in Kingdom Plantae, whereas the characteristic will show changes from bryophyte to angiosperm, and all the changes are actually important in terrestrial adaptation, which means bryophyte has the least adaptation to the terrestrial environment, whereas angiosperm, which is the most advanced plants, they show the highest terrestrial adaptation, or means that it can adapt better in the terrestrial habitat.